It is not uncommon to see a lot of professional wrestlers today who were once MMA fighters. In fact, some of them left the big wrestling stage to become a huge success in MMA. You may not know most of them, but you're about to find out about them in today's video. But before we get into the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on so you don't miss any of the new videos we post. Now that you've done that, let's rumble. Alberto Del Rio. After his debut match in 2010, Alberto Del Rio would go on to achieve great things in the world of wrestling. Within a year of starting his WWE career, he won the Royal Rumble against dozens of other equally amazing fighters to earn a chance at fighting for the world title. Of course, it was no surprise that he had the tag champion on his name multiple times, making him the first Mexican-born world champion ever in WWE. Sadly, his time with the WWE came to an end first in 2014 and then in 2016, after he had returned just a year earlier to win the United States Championship twice. After leaving this wrestling franchise, Alberto Del Rio decided it was time to return to the world of MMA. The fighter had actually had a great stint here with a record win of 9 out of 15 matches. His classic methods for winning in MMA were through submission, but Alberto Del Rio would face one of the most embarrassing moments of his career when he came face to face with UFC legend Tito Ortiz. This bizarre fight happened in December 2019, and we call it bizarre because Alberto Del Rio thought it was a good idea to put up a replica of the WWE title on the line. Well, it wouldn't have been so bad if he won the match, but he lost and had to awkwardly hand it over. Still, he said he lost because MMA had evolved while he was away. We can't deny the fact that he did hold his ground against Tito during the match, confirming how much of a pro he is in both WWE and MMA. Up next is Daniel Puder. Do you remember who won the 4th season of Tough Enough in 2004? Well, that was none other than Daniel Puder. And this is one feat that most wrestling fans will never forget in a hurry. It also helped that this win came with a whopping $1 million professional contract. He didn't only make a name for himself when he won the fight, but also got into a grappling contest in what is known as the infamous Kurt Angle incident. During this fight on SmackDown, Daniel Puder bent Kurt Angle's arm so far backward that it took the intervention of a referee to stop his arm from coming off totally. However, Daniel Puder didn't really have the super successful career at WWE that a lot of people expected and had to leave in 2005. Daniel never returned to the company, but instead went on to find success in MMA. From 2003 to 2009, Daniel Puder won every single one of his 8 brutal fights until he retired from the scene. How cool is that? We guess all that training with Danny Cade, Frank Shamrock, Javier Mendez, and Brian Johnson at the American Kickboxing Academy paid off before retirement. Daniel Puder made his debut in 2010 for New Japan Pro Wrestling. Unfortunately, he lost the match to Shinsuke Nakamura and then picked up his first victory a few months later. Up next is Jack Swagger. Although he is currently a professional wrestler under All Elite Wrestling, Jack Swagger made us look forward to watching wrestling during his time at WWE. But this wasn't where his career actually started. Before getting into WWE as Jack Swagger, this fighter was an All-American and 2-sport athlete at the University of Oklahoma. After he won the world title in 2010, Jack had one of the most interesting runs until he left WWE in 2017. So where did Jack Swagger go after he was done with this entertainment company? Well, he fell in love with MMA, and this was the perfect move for him at the time. The former world champion signed for Bellator MMA promotion in November 2017 and would compete in the heavyweight division. Following his fight debut in December 2018, this super skilled MMA fighter broke several records, and he is balancing this pretty well with his wrestling career at All Elite Wrestling. Up next is Bautista. Dave Bautista is undoubtedly one of the biggest names to ever be mentioned in connection with the WWE brand. There's a reason he's called the Animal after all. Most fans will never forget 2002 to 2010 when he made a huge mark as a professional wrestler in WWE. Although he came back in 2014 and then a final 1-year run from 2018 to 2019, Batista was responsible for a lot of unforgettable moments in the history of wrestling. All you have to do is remember how he was the first ever to pin Triple H in Hell in a Cell in 2005, or how he won the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 21. Today, Batista is one of the biggest names in Hollywood, with appearances in various Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. But here's one more thing you may not know about Batista. This impressive wrestler has always wanted to be a full-time MMA fighter, but changed his mind for a career in Hollywood, which really turned out well. While in MMA, he had one breathtaking fight with Vince Lucero, whom he won against via TKO in 2012. Bodybuilder, 6-time world champion at WWE, and former MMA fighter with no losses looks perfect on a resume. Up next is Dan Severn. Known as the Best, Dan Severn started wrestling in 1992 as an amateur wrestler before moving on to the big stage in WWE in 1997. Despite how brief his wrestling career was, Dan Severn still remains one of the toughest men in WWE history. He had a lot of great matches under his belt, with fans remembering the thrill of every fight. However, he had even more success as an MMA fighter. Dan Severn made his debut at the UFC at 44. While most people would think that was too old to have any meaningful impact, Dan proved them wrong. For 2 decades, he won 101 fights while becoming the only Triple Crown champion in UFC history. With one of the best records in MMA, Dan Severn will always be remembered as an MMA fighter that stood out in greatness. At 52, he was inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. Up next, Bobby Lashley. For his looks alone, you can tell that Bobby Lashley was made for MMA fighting. But that was right after his time with WWE. Starting from his days as an amateur wrestler, Bobby Lashley has always stood out. While at Missouri Valley College, he was a 3-time national amateur wrestling champion and then became a professional wrestler with WWE in 2003. During his time with this wrestling company, Bobby Lashley appeared at various live events and finally made his debut on SmackDown in 2005. Apart from his wrestling career, which has been successful so far, Bobby Lashley has also had a great MMA career. He left WWE in 2008 for Bellator, where he's considered a top draw. His MMA record is one of the best, with 15 impressive wins out of 17 matches. Only a few crossover athletes have this amazing record. Bobby Lashley is not done with MMA just yet. He enjoys it so much that he wants to keep fighting until he can't fight anymore. Up next is Shinsuke Nakamura. How many Japanese talents can you name as pro wrestlers in the last decade? Well, you would at least include Shinsuke Nakamura on your list, as he is one of the most decorated Japanese entertainers in the world. His career started at New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he quickly achieved fame for himself with tons of legendary matches. There was no doubt about it. Fans were screaming about Shinsuke Nakamura being one of the greatest wrestlers in the world, and they weren't wrong. Only a few years later, this pro wrestler got a contract with WWE, and he found himself in this more famous ring where he has had tons of titles and belts on his waist so far. But there's something most people don't know about this amazing wrestler, and that is his short yet eventful MMA career. As at 2002, Shinsuke Nakamura was actively into MMA, and even got a 3-1 record between 2002 and 2004. For a new fighter in the MMA game, this was a big deal considering the dozens of experienced fighters already in the MMA. Then, in 2005, UFC came with an offer to fight for them when they saw how great his MMA career was going. But Shinsuke Nakamura was still enjoying his contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling and had to pick one between both sports. The fighter has made his choice, and this was to continue with pro wrestling. Although he admitted that it was an amazing opportunity, Shinsuke Nakamura said he had no regrets and would still have to train for a long time to be ready for the MMA stage again. Despite still actively working in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the wrestler is more than happy to continue with WWE. Up next is Brock Lesnar. Would this list really be complete without the mention of Brock Lesnar, the man who broke The Undertaker's impressive winning streak with a very short WWE run between 2002 and 2004? When Brock Lesnar first got into WWE, many people didn't expect that he would end up making such a huge mark. However, those 2 years were more than enough to make his name one of the biggest in WWE history. After leaving the wrestling company in 2004, Brock Lesnar went into full training for the start of his MMA career and finally made his professional debut in 2008. This was enough for him to win match after match. as he became one of the biggest draws in UFC, with this fighter so popular that he headlined UFC 100 and defeated Frank Mir. WWE re-signed him in 2012, which increased his net worth to huge levels. Today, Brock Lesnar is known for his impact in both MMA and WWE. And there you have it. These are professional wrestlers who found success in MMA. Who is your all-time favorite wrestler? And who else do you think should have made our list? Let me know in the comments. And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching.